Hey everyone, as you can tell, I'm at work. I just had to pull over and share something real quick. As I'm delivering, I pull up to this house. The lady walks out because she's checking her mailbox for her newspaper. And I have two boxes for her, so we start walking up the driveway together. And she asked me if I had a happy holidays, and I was telling her how busy it was. I told her I had a really great Christmas and New Year's, and I asked her the same. I was like, how was your holidays? And with tears in her eyes, she said it wasn't good. And she said, he's sick. My husband's sick. He has cancer. I continue to small talk to try to change the subject because that's awkward. And I deliver her package. She said, what's your name? I said, Amanda. And she told me her name. I drove off. My heart's pounding. I do probably 20 more stops and I have to go back. With this kind of job, we're on a tight schedule. Quicker you do it, the better. Quicker you get home. I stopped what I was doing. I went back to that neighborhood and rang her doorbell and asked her. She came down the stairs and she had tears in her eyes when she saw it was me. She smiled and I said, ma'am, can I pray with you? And she just broke down. She came out on the front porch and squeezed me so tight. This lady I've never met. She held my hand so tight, and I prayed for her and her family and for her husband. And the point of this is a lot of people want the Lord to use them. And for me, as an example, I pray every day for the Lord to use me. But when he's trying to use you, or when you feel that call and that tug on your heartstrings, do you move your feet? Do you move? Because I easily could have just went. I have 100 stops. I easily could have just went about the rest of my day thinking about it. So when you feel those tugs on your heartstrings, and you feel like you need to do this, stop and do it. You know what I mean? Oh man. That was like the most genuine hug I've received in a long time. And I just want to share that with you guys. If you're praying for the Lord to help and to use you in people's situations, when he is giving you a chance, do it. If not, you're gonna continue to think about it and regret it. So be sure you know what you're praying for when you're praying. I don't know, it made me sad, but yet it made my day. This lady was just so alone. But anyway, you guys have a good day.
Just a couple things real quick. First of all, I can barely pay my own credit cards. Secondly, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for your commitment to get up early when it's 18, 20 degrees outside and to be here. And that says something. Thank you all very much. I myself only hit the snooze button 2 or 3. Maybe there was a 4th. I can't remember, but just thank you all so much for being here. Her name is Amanda Riggin. Or Rigan. I'm not sure how you pronounce it. I'm not sure where she lives, but this is one thing I do know, and you know as well. She felt the prompt of God. She felt God's Spirit speaking to her to do something, and she listened. She moved her feet. She moved her feet. I love it when people take obstacles that they see and turn them into opportunities that they can point people to Jesus. That's what we're called to do. I want to share something with you, and I run a risk, and here it is. What I'm about to tell you is not in the Bible. It's not scriptural. It is my opinion. And you did not come here to hear my opinion. I understand that, but I'm going to give it to you anyway. If you today, as an adult, are not on social media, you might be, or probably are, missing an opportunity to point people to Jesus. Now, let me back up and just give me 90 seconds of your life. An adult. I said adult specifically because I am deeply concerned, as many of you are, about what our young people and what people in general are exposed to nowadays on this. And let's go one step farther. I'm concerned as a parent of 2 boys and loving all our kids who are here of what some people choose to expose on social media and electronic devices. That deeply concerns me. But let me tell you something. 194,000 likes. And really, that's not that big of a deal to me personally, because I think a lot of times that can be no more than a popularity contest. I get it. Let me tell you, there are a lot of adults, a lot of you, a lot of people you know, perhaps that have been conscientious objectors of that. And I get it, the negativity, the false persona. My own wife, who's in the nursery, she's not here, she's there, so I'll talk about her. She said, I encouraged her to get on Facebook and to follow up with friends that she hadn't seen in a long time, and just to follow up so she can better connect. And she said this, and this is what she said. She was very resistant to getting on Facebook for a long time. And she said, I don't want everybody to know when I go to the bathroom. And this is what I said, dear, because if you start the conversation with dear, everything's going to be more palatable afterwards. So I said, dear, you don't have to let everybody know when you go to the bathroom. The point is this, isn't it true? You can control it, or it can control you. But the likes is not what I found interesting. It's the comments. 30,000 and growing from that video you just saw. Now, we can take it or leave it, but here's some things as I scrolled through briefly, because I don't have time to see 30,000 comments, and I don't care to, but I want to see what people were saying about that video you just saw. And there were things like, thank you for letting God use you. Thank you for taking the time to go back. Thank you for listening to the Spirit of God speak. I need to be more like you. It kind of spoke to me. See, I love it when people take obstacles and turn them into opportunities to point people to Jesus. She did that, and so can you. So can you. We are in John chapter 4. We started a series last week entitled Up Close and Personal. And we looked at this guy, this rich religious ruler named Nicodemus. A guy that had it all together. And this week we get to look at somebody who did not. Next week, you'll get to hear from my good friend Don Kirby about Jesus' life brushing up with a guy named Zacchaeus. But I love how Jesus blows up the barriers that separated people from God. It's crazy. But you know, in the Sunday school class I go to upstairs on Sunday morning, and what Terry Holden just said, as far as forgiveness, it is for everyone. See, it's for the religious, rich ruler of Nicodemus, and it's for the down and outers that we read in John chapter 4. John chapter 4, verses 1 through 14. Here it goes. Now Jesus learned that the Pharisees had heard that he was gaining and baptizing more disciples than John, although in fact it was not Jesus who baptized, but his disciples. So he left Judea and went back once more to Galilee. Now he had to go through Samaria, so he came to a town in Samaria called Sychar, near the plot of ground Jacob had given to his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there, and Jesus, tired as he was from the journey, sat down by the well. It was about noon. When a Samaritan woman came to draw water, Jesus said to her, "Will you give me a drink?" His disciples had gone into the town to buy food. The Samaritan woman said to him, "You are a Jew and I am a Samaritan woman. How can you ask me for a drink?" For Jews do not associate with Samaritans. Jesus answered her, "If you knew the gift of God and who it is that asks you for a drink, you would have asked him and he would have given you living water." "Sir," the woman said, "you have nothing to draw with and the well is deep. Where can you get this living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob?" I wonder if it was said sarcastically. "Who gave us the well and drank from it himself, as did also his sons and his livestock?" Jesus answered and said this. I remember having to memorize these next two verses in Bible college. I would encourage you to do the same. "Everyone who drinks this water will be thirsty again, but whoever drinks the water I give them will never thirst. Indeed, the water I give them will become in them a spring of water welling up to eternal life. See, I love it that the love of God transcends prejudice, don't you? The love of God transcends prejudice. There are a couple obstacles, I think, that Jesus just blows through in this passage, and I really want you to kind of key into this. The first obstacle is that I entitled religious activity. The obstacle of religious activity of Jews and of Gentiles. We know Samaria was not the most direct route, but I believe Jesus needed to meet the need of one person. And that one person would affect many, and those many would affect many more. See, we know Jews and Gentiles had not gotten along in a long time. They were rival religions. And if a Jew was going to go through Samaria, I found this interesting. These Samaritans would hassle the Jews. They would taunt them on their way to worship. Jews, if you were a good Jew, you would probably go around them because they were those sinners, those idolaters. She was a Gentile, untouchable. Are there Samaritans in your life? Are there people in your life that you struggle loving? Think about that. Maybe they don't share yours or our religious views. Man, may we love them like Jesus does. Listen to this. Gandhi, yes, that guy, Gandhi, read the Gospels and was curious, and he was spiritually seeking. And he went to church. And he felt pushed away by the people inside. And this is what he said. If there exists the caste system among Christians, I think I will remain a Hindu. That is tragic, isn't it? Tragic. Think about this. Who can you reach out to? Who can you reach out to? They might be different than you, and Jesus blew up the obstacle of religious activity. But Jesus blew up another obstacle. The obstacle of relational connectivity. Men and women. You probably knew this. Men in that day wouldn't have talked to a woman in public, not even if it was your wife. I bet you. Look at verse 9. Hear the heart in this. The Samaritan woman said to him, "You are a Jew and I'm a Samaritan woman. How can you ask me for a drink?" I bet you it blew her mind. One commentator says this is the most direct revelation that Jesus ever had with a person. And it was to a Gentile and to a woman. I find that interesting. See, Jesus blew up the barrier that separates people from God, and so can you and I. I wrote this down. I've said this before, working with students for many, many years, but I believe this is so true. People have never been more connected technologically and felt more isolated relationally. I think that's true. I think that's true. And we can be apart. God can use us to tear down the barriers that separate them from God. Ask yourself this question. Who is God leading you to reach out to? Who is God leading you to reach out to? There's another obstacle I think Jesus just totally blows up, and it's this. The obstacle of, and I entitled it, social identity. I used to watch this show, Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous, because, to be like them. Oh, to be like them. Have all their toys. Here, I love it that, we talk about the story from rags to riches. We've gone from the story of riches to rags. John chapter 3, Nicodemus, to a woman at a well, and in contemporary language, we might say the gutter. Compare and contrast these two people, Nicodemus and the woman. This is what one of my favorite authors says. She was an outsider, he was an insider. He was prestigious, she was an outcast. She from a very humble social status, and he was held in high honor. But they both shared the eager expectation of the coming Messiah. Sorry, Buck, I struggle with that. She would have felt like an outcast, 5 husbands and now living with a man. She was loose morally and probably burned out on life. She had a bad reputation. But this is one of the things I love about Jesus, and you should too. He was not afraid to risk his reputation. Instead of judgment, she receives grace that only he can give. I've never shared this story before, and it kind of breaks my heart to do so. Let me give you a little backstory. I've had the honor and the privilege for 20 years to lead, to put together, to be a part of mission trips from this church. We've been to Guatemala once. We're anticipating, Lord willing, this summer taking another group to Guatemala. There are a total of 29 of us going. Been to Mexico many a times, a long time ago. Probably won't go again for a long time as we've crossed into border towns. For safety and security reasons, it's oh so important. We've done Mission OKC right down the road, and the biggest challenge there is that we can all understand, hey, just 20 minutes down the road, there is a mission field. We have not been in some time to Dallas, inner city Dallas. And there are reasons for that. They've changed their leadership structure and why and how they do things. So we just haven't gone as much. But the times we did go to inner city Dallas, we would take a group and we would go down there and we would do a vacation Bible school program in the inner city. I say the inner city. It's not really the inner city. See, the church we met at and did the vacation Bible school is not too far from the Cotton Bowl, which I would call that area the hood. I remember we would go there, and we would go there during the day. We would be out by night for obvious reasons, but we would go there and we'd walk the streets and we would invite people to come. I never will forget this one time, and I don't have time to talk about this story. I've shared it before from this stage, but I never will forget walking up and down with a couple of our kids and adults. We had a good number, and I was walking down one side of the street, and some guys were up on the porch. They said, "Yo, come on up here." I was like, I just don't know about this, but hey, this is my heart, and hear my heart. I'm not afraid to take a little bit of risk, but I don't want to risk the risk of someone else, if you know what I'm saying. So I asked the students to go across the street, went up on the porch, and one guy asked me to pray for him. And I was glad to do that. It was you should have seen the porch. The shrubbery was much overgrown. They never would have found my body, but they did. Because we got to go up and I got to pray with this family and this group of people. I don't know if it's that trip, but it was another trip that I was on the corner I was right outside the church. And actually inside and on my way out, because I couldn't find Jim Elam, who's the missionary of the group that we were working with and partnering with. And I went outside and I found him outside on the sidewalk, talking to somebody. Now, I don't mean to sound stereotypical at all, but it became very clear she was a prostitute. And during the middle of the day, this one preacher, missionary, was out there and was hugging on her and held her hand. And it pains me to tell you what went through my mind for a few seconds. I thought, what are you doing? Somebody might see you. And I realized at that time, as I look back, I didn't like who I was. I was the Pharisaical religious leader that almost put on this persona like, you're not good enough to be here. I was wrong. Jim, can you imagine what her life was like? She was very open. I went out there enjoying the conversation. And he was just caring for her and just pointing her to Jesus and praying with her and wanted nothing from her but to point her to Jesus. It was amazing. It was amazing. Man, the obstacle of social identity, Jesus blew it up, and so can you and I. See, he blew up all these obstacles. Ask yourself this: who can you reach out to? See, one thing I love about Jesus, and you should love him too, is this. He loved the extremes. Nicodemus, he loved the woman at the well, and he loves everybody in between. You need to grab that, people. We need to grab a hold of that. See, Jesus created a wonder and a thirst in her life. Look at verse 10 and verse 15. Jesus answered, if you knew the gift of God, who it is that asks you for a drink, you would have asked him and he would have given you living water. Sir, give me this water so I won't get thirsty and have to keep coming here to draw water. Jesus created that wonder and thirst in her life. So I'm here to ask you, what obstacles do you need to turn into opportunities to point people to Jesus? What obstacles in your life or that you can think of or that you've experienced can you take and turn that into an opportunity? She did it with her busy schedule. I'm going to give you a couple examples of friends of mine, of people who are doing just that right now. My friend Barb, and I hope I don't butcher this, Barb, you and I talked about this, but was having challenges with a homeschool mom, and she was having difficulty with it, and she basically lovingly confronted her about her difficulty, and then later went up and apologize. It probably doesn't happen very often, but you know what? That caught her off guard, and she took notice, and it was a really wonderful thing how the Spirit began to work somewhat to soften this other mom's heart and life by my friend Barb following the Spirit's lead. How about this? My friend Kim feels the call, being a single mom, being busy with two energetic boys, to be a part of a startup of a new ministry that's going to start a week from this Thursday night called Thrive. If you could have seen the hospital the other day, OU Med Center, and setting in with Sam and Teresa Minnick for about an hour. And I talked with a guy that's in this room that I greatly respect and said, sometimes you can overstay your welcome, and I get that, but it became very clear very quickly, they just loved talking. And sometimes whenever I do, or we do hospital visits, one of the things I do is I kind of let them lead the conversation, and if they don't want to talk about it, we don't. We talk about different things. Teresa, her surgery went well, and she is home recovering 48 hours after having brain surgery. She's home and doing well. But I tell you, it was amazing, because even though the obstacle of being in there with an upcoming surgery, they had many opportunities to point people to Jesus and have conversations. Absolutely amazing. See, no matter what the situation, no matter what the circumstance is, you and I can take those obstacles and turn them into opportunities. How about this? Here's another one. Same hospital. Shelley Ladd. She came up, I think, 2 weeks ago, and we prayed for her and Aaron. Maybe that was just last week. I've slept since then. But you know what? Amazing. Yesterday she called me and said, Clay, do you have a few minutes? Well, sure, Shelley. And I went up to see her Tuesday. And by the way, let me update you real quick. She is now going through chemo, and she is anticipating having her bone marrow transplant Thursday or Friday of this week. And she had a question about the latter part of the book of Acts and the Holy Spirit kind of talking to Paul and how that played out. Now, I won't give you the whole conversation, but it was amazing. And she has a journal she's been writing in. It's her God journal, and how God is using this experience to point people to Him. That's amazing. Now, is that boy, I can't, okay. I think I've got time. No, I don't need stronger reading glasses. I just need to know what time it is. But I'm just going to tell you this story anyway, because it's worth you hearing. I'm a list person, many of you know that. Mondays are kind of crazy, staff meeting and lots of things going on. And I've sometimes found myself being discouraged if I don't complete my list. And if I do, I feel really proud of myself, right or wrong, indifferent. Nowhere on my list on Monday of this week was young man in probably your 20s, very rough looking, in a long black trench coat, knocks on the office door. That was not on my to-do list that day. Kathy, who is our new administrative assistant, and if you haven't met Kathy and her husband Marcus and their family, they are awesome. She is awesome. You'll love to talk to her. Her accent is amazing. Okay. She goes and peeks through the door, and then she comes and gets me and says, "Clay, I think it's for you." Thank you so much, Kathy. I walk towards, now I'm just going to walk down here just so you can see, the office door is on the east side of the building. I walk towards the office door, don't know who this is, black trench coat and that long army green backpack that you sometimes see. I went and I reached for it, and I was probably 3 or 4 steps away, and I stopped. And I said, "No, we're not opening the door. We don't know who this is. We have a safety team here at this church that the safety of our kids and our people are the prime." So important, so important. And we've been instructed even as a staff, if you don't know them, don't let them in. And I walked about 10 to 12 steps this way, and I froze. I wasn't frozen, but I just said, the Holy Spirit was just giving me this elbow. And those of you who have got the elbow and have got the nudge, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So I said to Kathy, "Okay, Kathy, I'm going out the back door. I'm going to secure it behind me. I've got my phone in one pocket, my car keys in another. If things go south, I can outrun that guy." But there's a flaw in my thinking. I'm getting to the point in my life where the question is not whether I can outrun that guy, it's how long and how far can I run. But I walk outside, secure the building, and I go up, and I talk to the strange, rough-looking young man in the dark trench coat. And what transpired was nothing short of a divine appointment. See, I don't know if I fully understand the difference between an interruption and a divine appointment, but if you're in one, you do. I walk out there, and I engage in conversation with this young man, and he gave me his blessing to share the story. I said, "Can I help you?" And we began to talk and share. He needed some help. He was trying to get his life back on track. I could tell you the story, but it's his to tell. But he was trying to get his life back on track. I walked him over to Christ's Closet, our clothing ministry, and I said, "Have at it, if I can help in any way." And I helped him in some other ways. Long story long. I ended up sharing the gospel with him. I ended up giving him a Bible. We ended up talking and sharing, and it wouldn't have happened if I wouldn't have moved my feet. I've got to tell you this. He said, "Clay, I've been to this church a couple times." Really? He said, "I was a student out at the Fort Reno Adolescent Center." He said, "You guys used to send a ministry team out there." I said, "We still do. Every Sunday. We've got a group of people that just love to be here and love to share and encourage and help in any way we can." I don't know if I can get through this. I'll try. He said, "Clay, there was a lady that was there when I was there. She's about like this tall," and that's all relative depending on how tall you are, "about this tall, blonde hair, and she was more like a mom to me than my own mom." I said, "That's my friend Charlie Childers. She's still here, and she still goes out there." You know, you and I have probably had to be the bearer of bad news before, right? That is not fun. But have you ever been the bearer of good news? It's a game changer. I got to call my friend Charlie and tell her what was transpiring and the amazing story of this young man. Once again, Charlie was on the phone, but I thought her voice was maybe a little shaky, but this is what she did say. Clay, you have made my day. Wow. Wow. See, I love it how Jesus took the obstacles that separated people from God and he made opportunities. So can you. The story ends, and truly just begins, with her leaving her water jar in verse 28. I didn't go that far. I read to verse 14. But could it be that perhaps now, for the first time in her life, her greatest need is not her physical need of water? It's the spiritual need that only Jesus can meet. See, I found, and you found too, that there are a lot of wells we can drink from in life. People that are longing for a relationship, people that are longing for furthering their career. There are many things, but there's only one: living water. It's a source that never dries up. So I have a question for you today. What well have you been drinking from? Only Jesus will satisfy. I want to close with a story called Inside the Fence. Here it is. William Barclay has written about a group of soldiers during World War II, had lost a friend in battle and wanted to give their fallen comrade a decent burial. So they found a church with a graveyard behind it, surrounded by a white fence. They found the parish priest and asked if their friend could be buried there in the church graveyard. Was he Catholic? The priest inquired. No, he was not, answered the soldiers. I'm sorry then, said the priest. Our graveyard is reserved for members of the Holy Church. But you can bury your friend outside the fence. I'll see that his gravesite is cared for. Thank you, Father, said the soldiers, and they proceeded to bury their friend just outside the graveyard on the other side of the fence. When the war had finally ended, before the soldiers returned home, they decided to visit the graveyard of their friend. They remembered the location of the church and the grave just outside of the fence. They searched for it but couldn't find it. Finally, they went to the priest to inquire of its location. Sir, we cannot find our friend's grave, said the soldiers to the priest. Well, answered the priest, after you buried your fallen friend, it just didn't seem right to me that he should be buried there outside the fence. So you moved his grave? Asked the soldiers. No, said the priest. I moved the fence. Would you stand with me, please? Aren't you so thankful that Jesus moved the fence? And this reoccurring theme of forgiveness is extended to the rich, the ruly, the prestigious, the lifestyles of the rich and famous, and it's included to the down and outers, and that perhaps are dressed in a black trench coat and the homeless and come and knock on your door, and all those in between. Today, I don't know where you are in your proximity to Jesus, but I think he's calling you and I to be up close and personal. So wherever you are, won't you take one step closer? I believe it's my friends, the Bonds, Doug and Carrie Bond, that will be making their way up to the side, up front. If you want a confidential prayer request, I tell you, I love Doug and Carrie. Been to Guatemala with my buddy Doug, and now I get to go to Guatemala with my sister in Christ, Carrie, and a group of people, wonderful people. If you have a prayer request, or maybe God is stirring something in you, and you want to make that known, or you want prayer, I want you to know this is the place, and this is the time as we sing. Won't you come forward?